English Daily, the podcast.
Your English journey starts now. Hey, English learners. Welcome back to your podcast, the English Daily Podcast.
Yes, we're so happy to have you here today.
Today's episode is all about weekly review and how to reconnect with yourself and your English goals.
That's right, and we're going to share some really powerful science-backed techniques that can help you get back on track.
Whether you've been learning English for years or just started, you'll find something valuable here today.
Happy listening! Let's dive right in.
So, Jack, I know this is something you've been talking about a lot lately, the idea of taking time each week to really check in with yourself and your language learning progress.
Absolutely. And you know what, Anna? I think this is something that a lot of learners forget to do. They're so focused on consuming content, doing exercises, and practicing speaking that they never actually stop to ask themselves, hey, am I even moving toward my goals?
That's such a good point. And I think the reason is that it feels uncomfortable to confront where you might be falling short, right?
Guilty as charged, honestly. I used to avoid reflection because I felt like if I looked too closely at my progress, I might realize I wasn't where I wanted to be. And that was kind of discouraging, you know?
I completely understand that feeling. But here's the thing. Reflection isn't about judging yourself. It's about understanding where you are so you can make better decisions going forward.
Exactly. And that's why we wanted to talk about this today. We're going to share two really powerful techniques that have helped us and that have helped a lot of our listeners. The first one is called box breathing.
Oh, I've heard of this. Isn't that something that Navy SEALs use?
Yes, exactly. Box breathing is a technique used by Navy SEALs to stay calm under pressure. It's simple. You breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold again for 4 seconds. That's why they call it box breathing, because you're creating a square pattern with your breath.
That sounds really interesting. But how does that connect to English learning?
Great question. Here's the thing. When we sit down to review our goals and our progress, it can bring up a lot of emotions. Maybe we feel frustrated that we haven't practiced as much as we wanted to. Maybe we feel overwhelmed by how much we still don't know. Maybe we feel guilty about taking breaks. And if we don't manage those emotions, they can take over and stop us from doing the review altogether.
Oh, I see what you mean. So if someone sits down to review their week and they feel overwhelmed or discouraged, they might just give up and not do it at all.
Exactly. That's where box breathing comes in. By taking a few minutes to calm your nervous system before you start your weekly review, you create a mental space where you can think more clearly and make better decisions. It's like pressing a reset button on your brain.
So how exactly do you do this? Can you walk us through it?
Of course. So you want to find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Sit comfortably with your back straight. Close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Then breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then hold that breath for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then breathe out through your mouth for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then hold again for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you repeat this cycle for about 2 to 3 minutes.
That's actually really simple. And you said this helps with emotional regulation?
Yes, there's a lot of science behind this. When you're stressed, your sympathetic nervous system is activated. That's the fight or flight response. Box breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest response. It tells your body that you're safe, and that allows you to think more clearly.
I didn't realize there was so much science behind it. So before someone sits down to do their weekly English review, they should do this breathing exercise first?
Absolutely. I would recommend doing it for at least 2 minutes. Some people even do it for 5 minutes if they're feeling particularly stressed. The key is to do it until you feel your body calm down and your mind start to settle.
Now, what about the second technique you mentioned? You said it's called self-explanation?
Yes. Self-explanation is a really powerful learning technique. Basically, it means talking to yourself, explaining things out loud as if you were teaching someone else. And the reason it works is that when you explain something, you have to understand it deeply enough to put it into your own words.
So it's not just reading or listening, it's actually verbalizing what you've learned.
Exactly. And here's how it connects to our weekly review. During your Sunday English routine, after you've done your box breathing and you're feeling calm, you can use self-explanation to review what you learned during the week. You can say things like, "This week I focused on improving my speaking confidence. What did I learn? I learned that speaking slowly and taking pauses actually makes me sound more natural, not less. I also learned that it's okay to make mistakes. They're actually learning opportunities. Let me explain why this matters."
I love that. And you know what I think is really important here, Jack? This self-explanation isn't just about the language content. It's also about explaining to yourself why your goals matter and why you're putting in the effort.
Oh, that's such a good point, Anna. You're right. During the weekly review, we should also be explaining to ourselves why we're doing this. Why does learning English matter to us? What will it enable us to do in the future? When we reconnect with our deeper motivations, we create more sustainable momentum.
So it's almost like you're having a conversation with yourself about both the technical aspects of what you learned and the emotional aspects of why you're learning?
Exactly. And that's what makes this weekly review so powerful. You're not just checking off a list of tasks, you're actually deepening your relationship with your own learning journey. You're saying to yourself, "I see you, I understand what you're going through, and I'm still committed to this."
That's really beautiful, Jack. I think a lot of learners feel like they're alone in their struggle, but this practice helps them feel more connected to themselves and their purpose.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think this is especially important for English learners because it's a long journey. There are going to be weeks when you don't make as much progress as you wanted. There are going to be moments when you feel like giving up. But if you have this weekly ritual, this Sunday English routine, it becomes an anchor that keeps you grounded.
So let's talk about what a Sunday English routine might actually look like in practice. Can you walk us through a typical session?
Of course. So let's say it's Sunday morning. You wake up, you have your coffee, and you decide it's time for your weekly English review. First, you find a quiet spot where you won't be interrupted. Maybe it's a cozy corner of your living room. Maybe it's a park bench, wherever feels comfortable for you.
And that's when you do the box breathing.
Yes, you start with 2 to 3 minutes of box breathing. You close your eyes, you focus on your breath, and you let your body and mind settle. You might even say to yourself, "I'm going to take this time to reconnect with my English learning journey. I'm going to be honest with myself about what worked and what didn't."
And after the breathing, what's next?
After the breathing, you might open a journal, physical or digital, and start writing. You might ask yourself questions like, "What did I practice this week? What new vocabulary did I learn? Did I meet my practice goals? If not, why not? What obstacles came up? How did I handle them?"
What if someone looks back at their week and realizes they barely practiced at all?
That's okay. And this is where the self-explanation comes in. Instead of judging yourself, you explore. You say to yourself, "I only practiced twice this week instead of my goal of 5 times. Why is that? Was I too busy? Was I feeling demotivated? Was the material too difficult?" And then you try to understand what would make it easier next week.
So it's not about beating yourself up, it's about understanding yourself better?
Exactly. And that's the key difference between a productive weekly review and a counterproductive one. If you use your weekly review to criticize yourself, you're going to feel worse and less motivated. But if you use it to understand yourself, you're going to feel more empowered and better equipped to make changes.
Now, how long should this whole routine take? Because I know a lot of our listeners are really busy.
That's a great question. I would say aim for at least 20 minutes, but you can go up to an hour if you have time. The key is not the length, it's the consistency. Even 15 minutes of focused weekly review is going to be more beneficial than 2 hours of sporadic reflection.
I love that. And you know what? I think it's really important to make this enjoyable. Maybe treat yourself to a nice cup of tea while you do it. Maybe put on some relaxing music. Maybe do it in a beautiful location. Make it something you look forward to rather than something you dread.
Absolutely. And that's something I've personally struggled with, Anna. I used to think that self-improvement had to be painful, that if I wasn't suffering, I wasn't making progress. But that's not true. Growth can be gentle. Growth can be kind. And your Sunday English routine should reflect that.
That's such an important mindset shift. Now, let's talk about goal tracking specifically, because I know a lot of learners set goals, but don't actually track them effectively.
Oh, that's such a good point. So let's say someone has set a goal to practice English for 30 minutes every day. How could they actually track whether they're meeting that goal? What should they be looking for during their weekly review?
Well, first, they need to look at the data. How many days did they actually practice? What days were missed? Was there a pattern? Maybe they always miss mornings because they're too busy with work. Maybe they always miss evenings because they're too tired. Once they see the pattern, they can adjust.
Yes, and that's where the self-explanation comes in again. Instead of just noting that they missed 3 days, they explain why. They might say, I missed Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday because I had work deadlines, but I still managed to practice on Thursday and Friday, which shows that I can fit it in when I prioritize it.
And what about quality? Should they also be thinking about how well they practice, not just how much?
Absolutely. Quantity matters, but so does quality. They might ask themselves, did I practice with full focus, or was it just background noise? Did I try to use new vocabulary, or did I stick to what I already knew? Did I step outside my comfort zone, or did I stay safe?
Connessive. What if someone feels like they made no progress at all? What if they feel like they've been stuck in the same place for weeks or even months?
That's such an important question, Anna, and I want anyone who's feeling that way to hear this. You are not stuck. You might not see the progress yet, but it's happening. Sometimes progress is invisible. Sometimes your brain is consolidating learning while you're sleeping or while you're doing other things.
Yes. And I think it's also helpful to remember that language learning is not linear. There are going to be plateaus. There are going to be times when it feels like you're not improving. But those plateaus are actually periods of consolidation. Your brain is organizing all the new information, and then suddenly you'll have a breakthrough.
Exactly. So during the weekly review, if someone feels like they haven't made progress, I would encourage them to look for small wins. Maybe they understood a movie without subtitles for the first time. Maybe they wrote an email in English without using a translator. Maybe they had a conversation and didn't freeze up. Those are all victories.
And that's another thing about self-explanation. You can celebrate those wins out loud. You can say, I can't believe I understood that whole paragraph. This is proof that all my hard work is paying off. And by verbalizing it, you're reinforcing those positive feelings.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about the emotional side of goal tracking, because I think a lot of learners get discouraged when they don't meet their goals, and that negative feeling can actually make them less likely to keep trying.
So, how do you handle that? How do you track your goals without beating yourself up?
I think the key is to separate your self-worth from your performance. Your worth as a person is not determined by whether you practiced English for 30 minutes every day. You are still a valuable, worthy person even if you missed a week. And when you understand that, you can look at your goals more objectively.
That's so important. And I think it's also helpful to have realistic expectations. If someone is brand new to English, they shouldn't expect to be fluent in 3 months. If they're busy with work and family, they shouldn't expect to practice for 2 hours every day.
The goals should be adapted to their real life.
Yes, and during the weekly review, you can adjust your goals. Maybe last week's goal was too ambitious. That's okay. You can set a more realistic goal for next week. Maybe it's 15 minutes instead of 30. Maybe it's 3 days instead of 7. The goal is to build consistency, not to be perfect.
And you know what I think is really powerful, Jack? When you use self-explanation to talk to yourself about your goals, you're essentially becoming your own coach. You're giving yourself guidance and support, and that builds a kind of internal motivation that doesn't depend on external rewards.
That's such a great point. I think a lot of people think they need someone else to motivate them, a teacher, a tutor, a study group, but the most powerful motivation comes from within. And this weekly review practice is a way to tap into that inner source of drive.
Now, let's say someone has been doing this for a few weeks. How do they know if it's actually working? What should they be looking for?
Great question. First, they should notice if they're more aware of their learning patterns. Do they have a better understanding of when they learn best? What motivates them? What holds them back? Second, they should notice if they feel more connected to their goals. Does it feel less like a chore and more like a meaningful journey? Third, they should notice if they're making more progress. Are they meeting their goals more often? Are they feeling more confident?
And I think it's also important to remember that the process itself is beneficial, even if you don't see immediate results. The act of reflecting, of explaining things to yourself, of breathing and calming your nervous system, all of that has value beyond just tracking progress.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think the most successful learners are the ones who view this as a lifelong practice, not a quick fix. They're not doing this for a week or a month. They're doing this as part of who they are. And that shift in perspective is really powerful.
So, what would you say to someone who's never tried this before? What's the first step?
I would say start small. You don't need to do a full hour-long session right away. Just try 5 minutes this Sunday. Find a quiet spot, do some box breathing, and then ask yourself one simple question. What did I learn this week? And then try to explain the answer out loud, even if it's just for a minute or two.
I love that. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to do this. The most important thing is to start and to be consistent. Even if it's imperfect, it's still valuable.
Absolutely. And we're going to give you some specific questions to guide your reflection in just a little bit. But first, let's take a quick break and then we'll dive into some vocabulary from today's episode.
Yes, and make sure you stay with us because we have some really useful phrases that you're going to want to add to your English vocabulary.
Before we go to the vocabulary section, I want to emphasize one more thing. The Sunday English routine isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about reconnecting with yourself, with your goals, and with the reason you started learning English in the first place. And that connection is what will sustain you through the long journey of language learning.
That's beautifully said, Jack. And I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this practice. Now, let's look at some of the key phrases from today's conversation.
Okay, so first, let's talk about the phrase box breathing. This is a breathing technique where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds. It's called box because you're creating a square pattern with your breath.
Can you give us an example of how to use this in a sentence?
Sure. I practice box breathing before my weekly English review to help me feel calm and focused.
Great. And what's another way to say this?
You could also say square breathing or 4-count breathing. Some people call it tactical breathing because it's used by military personnel.
Now, what about self-explanation? That's another key phrase from today.
Self-explanation is the practice of explaining things out loud to yourself, as if you were teaching someone else. It's a learning technique that helps deepen your understanding.
Can you give us an example?
Of course. During my Sunday routine, I use self-explanation to review what I learned during the week. I say things like, the past perfect is used to show that an action was completed before another action in the past.
And what's a similar phrase?
You could also say self-talk or verbal processing, but self-explanation specifically refers to explaining concepts to yourself.
Now, what about weekly review? This is something we've been talking about a lot.
Weekly review is the practice of taking time once a week to reflect on your progress, assess your goals, and plan for the week ahead. It's a productivity technique that can be applied to language learning.
Can you use weekly review in a sentence?
Sure. I do my weekly review every Sunday morning with a cup of tea and my English journal.
And what's another way to say this?
You could also say weekly check-in or weekly reflection. Some people call it Sunday reset.
Now, let's talk about goal tracking.
Goal tracking is the practice of monitoring your progress toward your goals. It involves keeping records of what you've done and measuring how close you are to achieving your objectives.
Can you give us an example?
I use a simple spreadsheet for goal tracking. Every day I mark whether I practiced English and for how long. Then, during my weekly review, I look at the patterns.
What about reconnecting with your goals? That's another important phrase.
Reconnecting with your goals means taking time to remember why your goals matter to you and renewing your commitment to achieving them. It's especially important during difficult periods when you might have lost sight of your purpose.
Can you use this in a sentence?
During my Sunday English routine, I take time to reconnect with my goals. I ask myself why learning English is important to me and what I want to achieve.
Now, what about Sunday English routine? This is our main topic today.
Sunday English routine refers to the specific set of practices you do on Sundays to support your English learning. It might include box breathing, self-explanation, weekly review, goal tracking, and other activities.
Can you give us an example?
My Sunday English routine starts with 10 minutes of box breathing, followed by 30 minutes of self-explanation and weekly review. It's become my favorite way to start the week.
Now, what about plateau? We mentioned this during the conversation.
A plateau is a period when your progress seems to stop, even though you're still putting in effort. In language learning, plateaus are common and normal. They're actually times when your brain is consolidating what you've learned.
Can you use plateau in a sentence?
Sure. I felt like I was stuck on a plateau for months, but then suddenly my speaking improved dramatically. Now I understand that the plateau was necessary for consolidation.
Now, what about consolidation? That's another term we used.
Consolidation refers to the process of strengthening and organizing new memories in your brain. It's what happens when you learn something new and your brain integrates it with what you already know.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Sleep is crucial for consolidation. That's why it's important to review material before bed. Your brain continues processing it while you sleep.
Now, what about internal motivation?
Internal motivation comes from within, from your own values, interests, and goals. It's more sustainable than external motivation, which comes from rewards or punishments from others.
Can you use this in a sentence?
Sure. The Sunday English routine helps me develop internal motivation. Instead of relying on external rewards, I'm learning to find meaning in the process itself.
Now, what about mindset? We mentioned this as well.
Mindset refers to your underlying beliefs and attitudes about yourself and the world. A growth mindset, the belief that you can improve through effort, is particularly helpful for language learning.
Can you give an example?
Sure. I used to have a fixed mindset about language learning. I thought some people were just naturally good at languages and others weren't. But now I have a growth mindset. I believe anyone can become fluent with the right approach and enough practice.
What about comfort zone? That's another phrase we used.
Your comfort zone is the area where you feel safe and in control. Stepping outside your comfort zone means taking on challenges that feel a bit scary or unfamiliar. That's where real growth happens.
Can you use this in a sentence?
I try to step outside my comfort zone every time I practice. That might mean watching a video without subtitles or having a conversation with a native speaker, even though it makes me nervous.
Now, what about breakthrough? We briefly mentioned this concept.
A breakthrough is a sudden, significant improvement or discovery. In language learning, breakthroughs often come after long periods of plateau. It's that moment when everything suddenly clicks.
Can you give an example?
I had a breakthrough last week. I was watching a movie in English and realized I understood almost everything without needing any subtitles. It was amazing.
Now, what about burnout? We briefly mentioned this concept.
Burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress. In language learning, burnout can happen if you push too hard without taking breaks. That's why the Sunday English routine, with its focus on rest and reflection, is so important.
Can you use burnout in a sentence?
I was experiencing burnout from studying too much, so I took a week off. Now I'm doing my Sunday English routine to help me get back on track in a sustainable way.
Now, what about productive?
Productive means being effective and accomplishing meaningful results. A productive study session is one where you actually learn and make progress, not just spend time.
Can you give an example?
My Sunday English routine is always productive because I use self-explanation to really consolidate what I've learned during the week.
Now, what about sustainable?
Sustainable means something that can be maintained over the long term without burning out or running out of energy. A sustainable learning routine is one that you can keep up for months or even years.
Can you use this in a sentence?
Used to try to study for 3 hours every day, but that wasn't sustainable. Now I do 30 minutes a day, and it's much more sustainable.
And finally, what about momentum? We mentioned this as well.
Momentum is the force that keeps you moving forward once you've started. Once you build momentum in your language learning, it becomes easier to keep going. The Sunday English routine helps you maintain that momentum.
Can you give an example?
I've been practicing every day for 2 weeks now, and I can feel the momentum building. It's much easier to sit down and study than it was at the beginning.
Those are some really useful phrases. Now, let's move on to reflection questions that you can use during your own Sunday English routine.
Yes, these questions are designed to help you go deeper in your reflection, and we encourage you to not just think about them, but to actually answer them out loud using the self-explanation technique.
First question. This week, what is one thing I learned in English that I'm proud of?
Take a moment to think about this. Maybe you learned a new grammar rule, or discovered a new podcast, or understood a song lyrics for the first time. Whatever it is, acknowledge it and celebrate it.
Second question. This week, what is one challenge I faced in my English learning, and how did I handle it?
Maybe you struggled to understand a video, or froze during a conversation, or felt demotivated. Think about what you did to cope with that challenge. Did you ask for help? Did you take a break? Did you try a different approach?
Third question. Did I meet my English practice goals this week? If not, what got in the way?
Be honest with yourself. If you didn't meet your goals, don't judge yourself. Instead, try to understand what prevented you from practicing. Was it time, energy, motivation? Once you understand the obstacle, you can plan for how to overcome it next week.
Fourth question. What does learning English mean to me right now? Why is it important?
This is a chance to reconnect with your deeper motivation. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to advance your career. Maybe you want to connect with friends or family. Whatever your reason, let yourself feel it fully.
Fifth question. If I imagine my ideal English self 1 year from now, what does that person look like?
This helps you visualize your future and reminds you of what you're working toward. What can they do that you can't do now? How do they feel when they speak English? Let yourself dream a little.
Sixth question. What is one thing I can do differently next week to support my English learning?
This is your action planning question. Maybe you'll try a new study method. Maybe you'll schedule practice at a different time. Maybe you'll join a language exchange. Be specific and realistic.
Seventh question. How do I feel about my English learning journey right now? Am I enjoying in the process?
This is an emotional check-in. If you're not enjoying the process, think about what you can change to make it more enjoyable. Remember, it should be sustainable and fulfilling.
Eighth question. What am I grateful for in my English learning journey?
Gratitude is so powerful. Maybe you're grateful for a helpful teacher. Maybe you're grateful for progress you've made. Maybe you're grateful for the opportunity to learn. Whatever it is, let yourself feel thankful.
Ninth question. What would I tell a friend who was struggling with English learning right now?
Sometimes we give better advice to others than we give to ourselves. Think about what you would say to a friend who was feeling frustrated or stuck. Then try to take that advice yourself.
10th question. Am I taking care of myself physically and emotionally while learning English? Am I getting enough rest?
This is important. Learning a language is demanding, and you need to take care of your overall well-being. Make sure you're sleeping enough, eating well, and taking breaks when needed.
Those are 10 questions to guide your Sunday English routine. We hope they help you have meaningful reflections and reconnect with your goals.
And remember, you don't have to answer all of them every week. Start with a few and add more as you get comfortable with the practice.
Before we wrap up, I want to say something to our listeners who might be feeling discouraged right now. Maybe you've been trying to learn English for a long time and you feel like you're not making progress. Maybe you've tried many methods and nothing seems to work. Maybe you're thinking about giving up.
Please don't give up. You're not alone in this journey. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast shows that you care about your growth. And that caring is the most important thing.
The Sunday English routine is a gift you give yourself. It's a time to slow down, to breathe, to reflect, and to reconnect. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. And that presence will transform your relationship with English learning.
We believe in you. We know you can do this. And we're so glad you're here with us on this journey.
Thank you so much for listening to the English Daily Podcast. We hope today's episode was helpful and that you're excited to try your own Sunday English routine.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who is also learning English. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Next week, we're going to talk about another exciting topic. We can't wait to see you there.
Take care of yourselves, English learners. Keep breathing, keep reflecting, and keep growing. We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Your learning journey doesn't stop here. Keep improving your English. Click the next video or explore more episodes we've picked just for you. See you in the next lesson.